Hello and welcome to the live. I'm Chrishayla Smith and I'm here with David Peters. Hey David, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Chrishayla. Glad you could join us.
Yes, glad we are here. Our theme this month on the archives page is service, and today we'll be talking about some of those service contributions that OSU has contributed to the world. So by service contributions, David, what are we talking about?
Well, as a part of the land grant mission, OSU is to provide educational opportunities, and originally the Morrill Act provided educational opportunities to students who normally wouldn't have education available to them, so they made education available to the public. They also provided research opportunities, and then over time they provided extension. And extension was a way to distribute the information that was being shared and developed at colleges and universities to the publics they served. So in Oklahoma, our extension service was designed to provide and share information to our local farmers, local communities, homemakers, whatever their situation in life. We try to provide information to make their lives more meaningful and more worthwhile.
Okay, sounds good. So we would like to hear from you all out there. So if you have any questions, feel free to place them in the comment section below and we'll get to them throughout this live. So let's get right into it. David, can you tell us a little bit about, have you seen OSU provide service throughout the years through the archives?
So we have a number of collections which kind of exemplify that branch of the land grant mission. We have an agricultural cooperative extension service publications. There's a number of different publications. We have them in a number of different series. We have literally tens of thousands of those documents that are a part of our collections. We also have the Soil Conservation Service, which was a university cooperative arrangement with the federal government. And in that case, we have a number of documents, and we also have glass lantern slides, especially from the period of the Dust Bowl and leading up to the Dust Bowl, and then immediately after that, which document that period. And then I forgot to mention early on, we were talking about service, and we're going to include that, I think, today is a military service and the role that military service has played. That was also one of the land grant mission objectives, was to provide training opportunities for military skills and skill development. And so we also have a number of collections related to military service, including World War I, World War II, and then we have some materials from a national organization, Scabbard and Blade, which we have their records. So we've got a number of collections related to the service and service activities at Oklahoma State University and opportunities that people have been given through their association with Oklahoma State University.
Okay. And so you mentioned glass lantern slides. Is that what we have here with us today?
Yes, we sure do. I'll show you one. So there's simply, this was an early way of sharing information. And so before there were movie theaters, you could go to a local theater, and there was a projector that would force light through the image and then project it onto a wall or a screen. And so someone would then narrate the images that they were seeing on the screen. So it could be a trip that was made to Paris or to Europe or some adventure that they had gone on, but they would share these glass lantern slides in a public arena. And so, and then eventually when movies came along, just seeing still images weren't that exciting. But from about 1910 to the mid-1920s, late 1920s, glass lantern slides were a popular way for people to share information, graphic image information to others. And so we have probably close to 750, 800 glass lantern slides. And of those, our Soil Conservation Service slides, and we'll show you some of those. We have about 250 of those. Many of them, these are slides from places in Oklahoma during the Dust Bowl. And so we'll just run through some of these real quickly. They were originally black and white images that were captured. What we've done is digitize them. Some of these images were later then colorized, and so they would add tints to them. So you had the impression that it was a colored image when really it was just a black and white image. But they really do document the impact of the Dust Bowl, especially in western Oklahoma. And there was an issue at the time for the Department of Agriculture. They dealt with erosion mostly as a waterborne exercise in which water would actually pull the soil and wash it down into the rivers and streams. the Dust Bowl was the first time where large volumes of soil were being moved by the air, and so they weren't really sure what to do with it. But as you can see from these pictures here that capture, I mean, this is a fence line, and he's standing at really would be the top of the fence because drifts of dirt and dust have gathered below that. Here's an example, and also along a fence line, but they're trying to push a car out. Cars would get stuck in this dust. It was tough to get good traction on it. Here's some railroad tracks, and so you can still see the railroad lines, and trains were heavy enough that they could still make their way through, but it really had a dramatic impact. Here's one of the most extreme examples of erosion. This has to do with the Dust Bowls as much as just the drought and then water erosion. But this is a deep cavern that's been created from erosion. Here's another example. This is in Oklahoma of a car on a bridge, and this is an intermittent stream bed down below it, but you can see the dramatic loss of soil in this slide. And then what the Soil Conservation Service did, and through the efforts of Oklahoma State University and those that we worked with, were developed techniques to try to control the soil. And so here's an early example which they're trying to build some terraces to keep the soil from moving. Here's some contour farming, contour terraces that were set up. It decreases the amount of soil that's lost by erosion from water. When it did rain, they tried to capture as much of the water as they could. And so if you built these terrace systems, it would hold the water there rather than letting it run off. And even we're talking about mules being used, but they developed this contour planting and cultivation. Also the use of green belts between crop areas to try to prevent erosion. Here's just an example of a family, a colorized picture that shows them with their watermelon field. But really the Soil Conservation Service, beginning in the teens, 20s, and then especially then with the 30s with the Dust Bowl, provided wonderful services and techniques to try to control or limit the impact of the Dust Bowl, which had a direct impact on many Oklahomans. So that's just an example of some of the glass lantern slides from that collection, and we've got more.
So if someone was to come in to look at those glass lantern slides, is there a certain way they would have to handle them? Do they have to wear gloves or anything like that?
We don't necessarily have to wear gloves with glass lantern slides because we're just touching the exterior. We probably would give them gloves. We just need to be careful with them, but we have them all available here. But an easier way for them and a little probably quicker way for them to view the slides would be to go online to the Digital Collections website in the library. And there we have the soil conservation slides already digitized and available online. You can do searching and hopefully find an area you're interested in or a certain situation you're looking for rather than have to sift through 250 slides. But we welcome people to come in and visit us. They can look at the slides individually, and we have a light platform they can use, and they can just see the slides that way, or they can go online and they can download the ones offline.
All right.
Okay.
Good to know. So let's take a look at some of the questions we have online, because again, we do want to hear from our viewers at home. So we have one question from someone on the Facebook page, and it is Tatum Wallace, and she would like to know, what role did women have during OSU service contributions?
Well, thanks for the question, Tatum. So women have been actively involved in both the cooperative extension publications, and so there were ag extension publications, but there were also, they used to call it home economics, but the cooperative extension service that provided information for women to make their lives and improve the economy and the ways they manage their household. So it could be financial things, it could be cooking, sewing, any things that go into maintaining a household. It could be even educational materials. So women were involved in producing that information on campus, and then women benefited from that throughout the state of Oklahoma. Women have also been involved with service in a number of different ways. One example in a collection we have is the WAVES. Those were women accepted for voluntary emergency service. That's where the term WAVES comes from. That was during World War II, beginning in October of 1942 or so. we began having WAVES training programs. And so women from across the United States would come visit our campus. They would be signed up for a certain period of training. They learned a lot of the clerical skills that were necessary to assist the military in their operations, things like shorthand and taking minutes and just typing, all those things that would then free up men then to serve in the field if the women were providing the clerical support that was needed. So we've had WAVES training here on campus. I think we have about 11 or 12,000 WAVES registration cards. These have been kept by the Spears School years ago, and then they transferred them to us because many of them were involved. Many of these women were involved in what used to be called commerce or secretarial skills training, and that was in the old days used to be supervised from the Spears School. So they had the cards, they gave them to us, and we have provided access then to those WAVES cards. So that's an example of women and their service both internally within the state and then women from across the United States joining to help the military during World War II.
Okay, yes, no. That takes us to our next question, which we've just recently, a couple weeks ago, published, a video about Murray Hall.
Murray Hall. Mm-hmm.
Which I know that the WAVES did live in.
Yes.
Are there any other houses or dormitories that you know of that they stayed in?
They may have also been in Willard for a while. Murray was kind of the main headquarters for most of the WAVE training locations where they stayed, their residents. There may have been some in Willard. What happened was during the war, our enrollments declined dramatically. And so President Henry Bennett had reached out to the military branches saying, what can we do to assist with the efforts to prepare ourselves for the war, and then during the war to help with the war effort. And so he was the one who actually initiated the WAVES training coming here. Since we had empty dormitories, many of them were empty, we then made those available for training. And WAVES weren't the only ones that trained here. There were other groups that trained here also. But I think the WAVES were almost exclusively in Murray and perhaps in Willard Hall, which are both very, very close to each other, right there by Theta Pond. Many of the WAVES later years responded how pretty they thought campus was, and how wonderful it was to be close to a pond nearby, and so most of them had many wonderful experiences to share of their experiences here. It was just a short time they were here, but they seemed to have a lasting memory for them. So
awesome. So I know we just celebrated Veterans Day,
mm-hmm.
and so I think it'll be a great time to talk about the Oklahoma AMC World War I Veterans Collection we have here in the archives. Can you tell us more about that?
Sure. So after World War I, so we're talking about roughly almost 100 years ago now, the university reached out to all the students that they knew of who had served overseas in some capacity, or at least joined the military. Some of them didn't make it overseas, but at least made it into training stateside. So they reached out to all these individuals, and they collected this survey information from them. It included oftentimes pictures of themselves, some of the places they visited, some of their friends, but also then a description of where they went, where they were trained, information about them, some demographic information about themselves. And then they sent it back, and they received, I think, close to 500 or more responses from this survey that went out. Now these things sat in some folders for decades, but we've discovered them, and now they've all been digitized, and so they're available for people to look at. It's really kind of an interesting collection of material because it shows the impact that the war had on these soldiers, and this is both men and women, and the impact they had then going out into the world to serve. And it has some pictures I think are kind of special, and you won't find them anyplace else. These are individual photographs that these individuals took of capturing their experience. So it's a wonderful collection. It's also available online. If you go to the digital collections site for the library and go down to, I think it's World War I OAMC Student Service or something like that, they can find that collection and view all those records. they're also available here if they want to come and actually look at the items in person.
Good to know. And we have one question before we sign off here from someone on our Facebook page, which it is related to the last question about our veterans. It's from Bonnie Kane Wood, and her question says, the flags on library lawn are a relatively new tradition. What are some other ways veterans have been recognized on campus in the past?
So after World War I, they created a huge service flag, and it was a flag of the United States. I'm sorry, there was a flag of the United States on there, but it was a large flag, and it had stars, and each star represented a service member who had been a student at the college. And then there was a coding system, and so a certain color meant that individual had been deceased and had given their life during the war effort. There was also another, I think, a little code maybe for those who had served in the medical corps, something like that. But there was a large service flag, and it spelled out OAMC with these stars, and then there was a border around it. It's a mystery what happened to that flag. We have pictures of the flag. It would be displayed at events, usually around Armistice Day, which now we celebrate as Veterans Day, but usually on November 11th. It would be displayed at that ceremonies that were held here. But what happened to that flag, we're not sure. I think the first or second Armistice Day, the Secretary of War, which is now Secretary of Defense for the U.S. government, came and spoke on campus for that occasion. There's a large, actually I think it's 2 plaques that are in Bennett Chapel. When you first enter Bennett Chapel, on the wall to your right, that commemorates those who gave their lives in World War I. And so that's a memorial for service, for military service on campus. And then Hanner Hall, which was torn down recently, but was named for Carter C. Hanner. Hanner was the first Stillwater student who died during the war effort. And I believe that they're planning on a small memorial just north of the new Spears Business School building to commemorate Carter C. Hanner. So there have been other items like that where they've recognized military service by either individuals or groups. I know in the past there were several trees that have been planted on campus, so there have been other memorials on the campus, and we try to retain a special place for our military service veterans.
Right. So throughout this live, we talked about a lot of collections that we have, and we know that there's a lot of work that OSU has contributed to service. So could you tell them one more time, just in case someone missed it, how they can access all these collections?
All right. So first of all, if they want to, and we love to have visitors, they can come visit us on the 2nd floor of the Edmund Lowe Library. We have our reference area on the east end of the 2nd floor. But if they're unable to visit us here, then they can go online to the main library page, and there's a tab there where they can select down to digital collections. And then many of the items we've talked about today are in that digital collections listing. The Ag Cooperative Extension materials are in there. There's, like I said, over, I think, 11,000 items in there. The OAMC student service records from World War I are in there. There's a number of other, and they'll probably discover a number of other collections that have been digitized and available there. But if they go to the digitized collections on the OSU page, library page, they'll find all of these collections we've talked about.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So thank you so much for chatting with us today, David. And thank you to all of our viewers out there who are watching and who sent in questions. We have videos about the glass lantern slides, as well as the building mentioned for the Waves, that the Waves
Murray.
stayed in. Yes, Murray Hall, which all can be found on the Facebook page, here on the Facebook page, on OkState TV, as well as the YouTube page at OkStateLibrary. And so we want to thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time on Archives Live.